I gotta thank Boost Auto for once again coming through in the clutch on this new video for the channel. Today we're going to be installing Boost Auto's new retractable steps for the 2019 Silverado. Previously we had some retractable steps from Rough Country on the truck, so we went ahead and taken those off. Now we're putting these new ones on, so let's go ahead and get to work. These are the motors and mounts for the Boost Auto steps. We're going to start by working on installing the passenger side of the vehicle. Everything we do will be mirrored on the driver's side as well. We're going to be using these holes to mount this bracket. I'm going to start by putting a bolt plate in this one. Just going to slide a plastic retainer over this bolt plate and then put it down in the hole, and then tighten the retainer so that it holds the bolt plate in place. And we're going to start by taking the bracket, putting it over the bolt plate, then we're going to put on a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut to help hold the bracket in place. Now we're going to use this inside hole up here and this hole down here on the bottom for the other two bolts of the bracket. These are also going to have flat washers and lock washers on them. We're not going to fully tighten everything down yet, but we are going to snug it just to make sure everything's held in place properly. At the rear of the vehicle, you're going to use 4 holes to mount the bracket for the rear mounting. On my truck there's only 2 threaded holes. There seems to supposed to be 4 according to the instructions provided by Boost Auto, but I only have 2 threaded holes, so we ended up drilling some extra holes and using some extra bolt plates that we have here in the garage for mounting the other side of the bracket. Just letting you know that if you don't have holes, you may have to make them yourself. I don't know if my truck was just missed with adding the extra threaded holes when it was being made, or if that's dependent on if it's a Sierra or a Silverado, or if there's a trim piece or something. But this is how we're getting by. So we're going to put the bracket up, we're going to slide it onto these bolts, and then mount it over here with the provided bolts from Boost Auto. Now that we have all the brackets mounted, we're going to put some heat shielding by the motor because there's this wire loom that runs along the truck right here. So we just want to try to make sure that there's not going to be a lot of heat and vibration going through that wire loom. Boost Auto does provide heat shielding with their products. So we're just going to peel the backing off, slide it in here, and just wrap the motor. And we can do that on both sides. So the next part that we're going to do is start routing our wiring harness. There are 2 sides to the harness, the driver side and passenger side. They are labeled accordingly. So you're going to want to pass each one down. Like for the passenger side, you're going to pass it down here between the fender liner out under the truck, and then run the driver's side across the engine bay and down on that side as well behind the fender liner and under the truck. And then the gray connectors will plug into the motor connectors that are on the motor brackets at the front. next thing we're going to do is route these wires into the cab for the signals to the motors. There's a grommet back here behind the battery that we're going to be putting these through. You can get to it from inside the cab. For those of you that have seen my infotainment module upgrade for the factory wireless Apple CarPlay, this may look familiar. We're going to be removing this harness right here, temporarily of course, and this bracket that it mounts into so that we can get to the grommet that's behind it that goes out to the firewall in the engine bay. What we ended up doing was using a long straight coat hanger and running it through the hole in the grommet in the firewall, and then using it to pull the wires through into the truck. All right, so we pulled the rest of this wire through the center console to bring it over to the driver's side. Now we're going to be tapping into the wires on the OBD2 port. First one I'm going to be tapping into is in pin location 6. When you're looking at it from the back with a wider side up, it's 6 from the right. So using the wire taps that were provided, I'm going to use the wide end to tap onto this wire and snap it in. So the orange and white wire that comes in the kit is the high input. That's the one that's going to go in the clip that we just put in to the wire tap. Just going to press that in, let it clip down. And then we're going to tap to another wire on the OBD2 sensor. Now we're going to use low input to pin 14, which will be this yellow wire right here on the bottom. Again, we're going to do the wide mouth end of the tap on this wire here and click it down. And then we're going to take the low input wire into the small end and clip it down. Now we're going to put the OBD2 connector back into its harness. Now that we've ran the wires in the truck, we can hook the control module up, get the wiring harness plugged in to that, and we're just going to mount it kind of out of the way. I'm going to slide it right next to the battery and then zip tie the wires over here so it doesn't bang around and get in the way of anything else. And of course, once we're done with all of this, we will do wire cleanup to make sure everything's put away and looks as tidy as possible. Now we're going to install the ring terminal on the battery for power. And now we'll be hooking up the ground wire. We'll be doing it right here, so we'll take this off. Now we'll get the wires cleaned up in the engine bay, reconnect the battery connector, and move on to getting the steps installed for the running boards. We have our Boost Auto running board here. We're just going to prep these to get them on the brackets. We have carriage bolts that are just going to slide into the slot to the approximate position of where they'll need to be for the brackets. Once we have those on, we'll just carry the board over and get it lined up with the brackets. After you get the carriage bolts in the slot on the step, you're going to line them up to go through these holes on the brackets. We'll get the first one to come out by opening the door since everything's hooked up down there in the front. We'll get them in here, and then we got nuts that'll go on from the bottom to tighten the step down onto the bracket. You may have spacers in your kit. If you're not using the foam pads on top of your steps, they recommend adding the spacer between the bracket and the step. If you are using the foam pads, they recommend not using the spacer and just putting the step directly on the bracket. before I tighten these down, we're just going to measure from the mud flap to get the step kind of where I want it to be. That looks good right there. And now we're snug down those nuts. We should be good mounting everything, so we'll just do some wire management and see how everything looks. So now we've got the new Boost Auto retractable steps on the Silverado. There are two versions of these retractable steps from Boost Auto, the standard version, which I have, and then the Luma M2 retractable step, which has an LED light that goes down the side of it. It includes parking lights, rock light functionality, turn signal functionality, but I chose to go with just the standard model that didn't have those lights running down the side of the truck. And I think these look really good. I like the way they tuck up under the truck. You can see here that they tuck up really nice and get really close to the bottom of the truck. And I just think that gives it a nice clean look. Overall, I'm very happy with the way these steps turned out, but I do have two suggestions maybe for Boost Auto. Things that I would kind of like to see changed a little bit. The first being the time that they take to fold back in after you close the door. It seems to be a little long. That's probably intentional just to make sure people aren't standing on the step. But I do think they could cut it maybe in half and still have a good amount of time to make sure everybody's off the step before they start folding, especially since they have the no pinch functionality. The other change or suggestion that I would like to make is for the steps to maybe come out a little bit farther when they are open, because when you're stepping out of the truck, they do feel like they're a little bit close, where you kind of just get like your heel on the step, and it may not feel like you have a really good, stable, solid step under you when you're stepping out. It's not a deal breaker. Neither of these items are a deal breaker by any means. They're still really good steps. You can still step out and step off, but they are a little bit different to get used to when you've maybe used other brands of steps that come out a little bit farther and you're used to having that a distance where you're putting your foot stepping out of the truck. Even with those two suggestions, I'm still super happy with these steps. I think Boost Auto did a great job designing the overall look and functionality. And I highly recommend, if you are looking for retractable steps for your truck, to check out the Boost Auto link down in the description below. If you want to see some other Boost Auto modifications and accessory options, check out this playlist that I've got right here. Thanks Boost Auto for helping me with this video. If you liked it, give it a nice little thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But for now, this is Southpaw Garage signing out.